Hi everyone, my name is Kaitlyn and this is my PowerPoint presentation over Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, or better known as ADHD. So how many students with ADHD are currently being served in the United States? According to our textbook, in 2011 there was approximately 7% students that were said to have ADHD. Out of those students diagnosed, majority of them were male. It said that up to 3 times more likely than females. Then I read an article from the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention that stated in 2016 there were 1.6 million students diagnosed with ADHD. That was at 9.4%, so it increased quite a bit there. And then it said that the total included students from ages 2 to 17 years old. This is the latest data that I found for sure that to have numbers, but I also came across an article, ADHD numbers are rising and scientists are trying to understand why, and it was posted by Washington Post, and it said that the ADHD number had gone over the 10% mark diagnosed in the year 2018. But like I said, the 2016 data was the for sure last number I had, so I went off of that one. So how has the number of students identified increased in recent years, and what are some of the reported reasons for increase? So it increased 30% from the late 90s to the 2011. Then from 2011 to 2016, it increased 2.4%. So I couldn't find exact reasons for this increase, but there were several mentioned that are possibilities for the increase. One of those would be that just better health care because of the Affordable Care Act, and that students that have low-income families were actually now being able to be diagnosed because of that better health care. There was also mention that premature babies had lower survival rates back in the day. Now they have better survival rates. So because of that, the ADHD numbers are increasing just because there's more people, but also because ADHD is linked to brain development. And then the last one that I found for a potential reason why would be that some think that maybe students are being overdiagnosed. And again, this could be a completely opinionated thing, but that was just one of the reasons possibly why. So, what are the specific behaviors and characteristics of students with ADHD, and in what ways do those characteristics make it difficult for students to learn and participate in school? So there were 3 subtypes of ADHD that I found, predominantly hyperimpulsive, predominantly inattentive, and then a combination of the 2. So I'm going to go through each of them and tell their characteristics and why they would be difficult for school. With predominantly hyperimpulsive type, the characteristics just go along with talking a lot. They're always on the go. They're having trouble staying still or being quiet, and they have difficulty waiting their turn, and they often interrupt people. So this would make school difficult because of their friendships with their peers. It would suffer just because nobody likes being interrupted or somebody that talks too much, which is really, really hard for students because they don't understand that. And so it could suffer. And not all people would be upset with those characteristics, but it could be something that potentially would suffer friendships. Also, they would be constantly getting disciplined for interrupting, for not talking when they're supposed to, not staying seated, not waiting their turn. And that would make school a difficult place to be in if you're always getting corrected. And then with all the distractions and moving around, they aren't going to get all the information that they need to stay on task completely. So with the next one, it's predominantly inattentive type. With the characteristics for this one, they make careless mistakes just because they're not paying close attention to their details. They're having a hard time focusing academically or even with their social activities. They're not listening to others. Even when the person's directly speaking to them, they're not listening as well as they could be. They're having difficulty organizing or keeping track of their items needed, and they're having trouble avoiding distractions in total. So this would make school difficult because if they're losing or not keeping track of their items, they're constantly looking for a pencil or pen to write with. They're looking for their assignment that was due, the paper that they just had. Also, it goes back to friendships. They would have struggle socially a little bit, and then they would need to ask for help on their assignments because they're not fully grasping all the things needed to complete that task or the instructions on there. They could even have trouble remembering to turn in their work. So that would be all reasons why it'd be difficult. For the last one, the combined type, it's the most common type, and that's because it's a combination of the two. So the characteristics are a combination of the previous that we just talked about. This would make school difficult because students with ADHD have lower vocabulary, and often grade point average is lower as well. Back to the friendship with peers, and then they would have trouble focusing or staying on task. So overall, and the picture I included on this slide, I feel like sums it up as a whole. It just sounds like, or looks like this kid is having trouble staying on task. He's looking at his socks instead of the paper, and you can tell that the teacher is looking at him like, I need you to stay on task. So do all students with ADHD demonstrate the same characteristics or degree of behavior? No, it's as simple as that. Just like anything, students are all unique. So every student with ADHD is going to have their unique characteristics or behaviors. And it kind of goes back to the 3 subtypes. They could be any one of those types, and that right there would separate them into different categories. So they wouldn't have the same. Also, most students with ADHD don't only have ADHD, they also have other disabilities. Well, the common ones are intellectual disabilities, learning disabilities, or emotional and behavioral disorders that go along with it. So that, of course, would add a lot more complexity to their diagnosis, and they wouldn't demonstrate the same characteristics or behaviors. According to IDEA 2004, under what category are students with ADHD identified? According to IDEA, ADHD is like a subcategory of the category other health impairments. So it makes up 2/3 of this subcategory. It defines other health impairments as students that are limited in their strength, alertness, or energy. It also talks about students that have a heightened alertness to their environmental stimuli, and basically just letting their environment affect how they are. And according to our textbooks, other students with disabilities in this category would include asthma, attention deficit disorder, epilepsy, diabetes, sickle cell anemia, Tourette syndrome, lead poisoning, and or heart conditions. So you can see that there's a wide range of what goes into this category. But like I said, 2/3 of it is ADHD, so it does take up quite a bit of this category. So discuss effective class-wide interventions for all students, especially for those who display characteristics of ADHD. When I think of interventions, I think of how we can improve, how we as teachers and educators can go in and change things up to improve the life for our students in the classroom. So when I was thinking about that, what I would do for students as a whole, but especially my ADHD students, allow your students to take breaks, but also use learning activities that allow them to get up and move around, be more hands-on, so that they're not just sitting there watching you take notes the whole time or give lectures. Think about the seating arrangement. So don't put them next to the class pet where a guinea pig's going to be squealing all the time and their attention's going to be over there, or next to the pencil sharpener where kids are going to be constantly walking past them. Place them next to students who will help them keep on track if they do get off track, and allow students to stand up or sit down during certain activities. If they feel like especially ADHD students, they feel like they need to move around, just allowing them to stand up, I feel like would help them. And then, like for all your students, you're going to set times and tasks for the test to be completed. But also with your ADHD students, maybe give them a little bit more time just so that they don't feel rushed. And if they do then need that additional time, they will have it. Use activities that will help them socialize. This kind of goes back to them having issues in the social department with their peers. So maybe have like a positive mingle or activity that makes them talk to their friends and their peers. Also, organize the classroom with certain locations for turning in projects or assignments, to hang their coats, etc., so that they're not confused and wandering around and feeling like they're lost. If they get caught off task, they don't forget what they're doing. And then also visual aids or posters to help them know the instructions in full is very, very helpful for students with ADHD. That way they have a poster that they can go to if they do feel lost or not quite sure what they should be doing at that moment in time. And then here are my resources. I used a lot from our textbook. I also read the article from the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, and then the article from the Washington Post. The ADHD numbers are rising and scientists are trying to figure out why. And then of course all my images were from Google Image. I appreciate you watching my PowerPoint. Thank you so much. Have a great day.